Let's move on to FIFRA. This law is essentially a product licensing statute. It applies a cost-benefit approach to licensing decisions. Once licensed, FIFRA regulates two areas. The first is labeling, that all-important warning label when you go buy some product like Roundup to kill weeds. The second regulatory area is usage, to ensure that the product is used as the manufacturer intended. Abuses or improper use typically results in death or harm to humans or animals. The law stops at labeling and usage. Registration is the core of FIFRA because it gives EPA control over whether a pesticide is distributed or sold. The applicant must provide the label, product instructions, and the scientific data to decide whether or not the pesticide meets the legal standard for registration. So the burden of proof is on the applicant. Compare this with TSCA, where the burden of proof is on EPA. EPA must review all the information and make a decision in a timely manner. The fact that the time frame is not defined has resulted in significant delays. EPA's review standard also involves a finding of no unreasonable reverse effects, taking costs and benefits into account. Compare the time frame and cost consideration here with TSCA. EPA must register the pesticide if 1. It warrants the claims made by the applicant, 2. The label is compliant with the law, and 3. There's no unreasonable adverse effects if used according to its intended function and instructions. The Act defines pesticide broadly. Note that this definition focuses specifically on the intended use of the substance, not its inherent toxicity. The term intended is not defined in the law, but EPA rules focus on the intent of the manufacturer, seller, or distributor, and not the intent of the user of the product. There is an imminent hazard exemption to expedite the review for canceling or suspending of registration. EPA must show that during the normal process of canceling or suspending, there would likely be unreasonable adverse effects on the environment, but this finding would have to include economic, social, and environmental costs and benefits. Every licensed pesticide must have an EPA-approved label that sufficiently articulates the risks it presents and instructions on proper use and disposal. Labels must be accurate, they can't be misleading, and they must have directions for proper use and warnings to protect the users and the public. In 1996, FIFRA was amended to address pesticide residue on foods after spraying. Prior to this change, federal law banned any food additive that had been found to induce cancer in humans or animals in any dosage. But today there is an allowable amount of pesticide residue on raw and processed foods. The standard is one of reasonable certainty that no harm will result from aggregate exposure to the pesticide residue. FIFRA allows the export of unregistered pesticides. A manufacturer might want to export an unlicensed pesticide because there might not be a need for the product in the United States, for example, DDT and malaria, or the registration application is pending, or because the product failed registration here. If the product failed registration, the law only requires the EPA send a notification to the appropriate foreign official about this fact and the reason why it failed. FIFRA preempts states from regulating labeling or packaging, but what about a state that asks for more data? A federal district court upheld the state's request because the judge found that FIFRA did not speak to this area, so there was no federal preemption. How about a state that wants to control the pesticide's usage? For example, if a state requires a 60-day notice prior to spraying or requires posting signs prior to spraying, the U.S. Supreme Court found that this was not federally preempted, since the local law related to usage of a pesticide, not to FIFRA-regulated label claims. States were not preempted by FIFRA.